Let me introduce you, Paul Clayton, a member of Royal Society of Medicine, and I know that you were participating in a meeting yesterday with renowned scientists, which took held in the Parliament, in the English Parliament. What was this debate about?
The British government, like every other government in the developed world, has a huge problem with degenerative disease. We have been operating a fundamentally 19th century model of medicine, using drugs, very specific, very toxic, very expensive, that we use to treat the symptoms of degenerative disease, but they do not cure degenerative disease. And even although we can sort of help individual patients, outside the surgeries, outside the hospitals, the tidal waves of illness are gathering. We're seeing more and more cancer, more dementia, more coronary artery disease, more diabetes, of course. And we've become aware of the fact that the 19th century pharmaceutical model, magic bullets if you will, is just no longer appropriate. It's not getting to the heart of the problem. Instead of trying to plug up the holes in this boat, which is not so much, it's got so many holes, it's more like a sieve, not a boat anymore. What we must do is to address the root causes of these illnesses and create a body of public health that is once again intact. We need to heal it. And the only way to do that, there is a growing consensus now, is by changing people's lifestyles, showing people how to live healthier lifestyles, eat healthier diets. And that is the only way we're going to create a healthier public and give Britain and give Hungary the public health that it deserves and that it should have and that it can afford.
And what were the practical steps that you suggested to imply to achieve these goals?
What is emerging now in medical science is something that you could compare to the grand unifying theory in physics, which shows that all of the energies, the weak and the strong forces, the electromagnetic forces, are all related somehow. And what we're beginning to understand in medicine is that the different disorders, cancers, dementias, coronary artery disease, the arthritides, they look very, very separate. They look like islands separated from each other in the ocean. But under the surface, we now understand that they are all joined. That's all one mountain range, and it has one base. And at that base of this new unified theory of disease is a process called chronic inflammation. And we have discovered that people today live in a way that encourages chronic inflammation. So people are carrying around these bombs inside them which could explode as a cancer or a heart attack or a stroke. And what we need to do is to put out the fires. And we can do that in three very simple ways. Increase the amounts of anti-inflammatory nutrients in your diet.
What are these basically?
Well, there's three of those too, the rule of threes. So 1,3,1,6 beta-glucans, such as Wellmune, which improve the efficiency of the acute inflammatory response, so less of those go and become chronic. The omega-3 fatty acids, which are very well known, but should never be used on their own because they must always be combined with the partner anti-inflammatory compounds, which are polyphenols, which were first characterized in Hungary by Gyulladás, the Nobel Prize winner. His work was forgotten, but it's now coming back. We now understand he was exactly right in many respects. So the combination of the beta-glucans, the omega-3s, the polyphenols, that is a combination that puts out the fires. The second thing you must do is to reduce those parts of your lifestyle which are exposing you to pro-inflammatory factors, which means stop smoking, but you already knew that. But it also means eating less pro-inflammatory foods. And the pro-inflammatory foods in shorthand, are foods cooked at high temperatures. So fast foods, because to prepare food very rapidly, you need to cook it at a very high temperature. And those high temperatures produce compounds called ages and ales and various other things, which are very pro-inflammatory. So I'm afraid no more McDonald's, no more Pizza Hut, none of that crap, and it is crap. Slow cooked foods, or foods cooked at low temperatures. That's the second thing. Third thing, more physical exercise. Not exaggerated. I mean, I don't want you to go out running marathons because that's all pro-inflammatory as well. Moderate levels of exercise. which are important in helping you to maintain blood glucose levels, blood insulin sensitivity, and a good body weight. Now, not everyone is willing or able to spend time on the treadmill or the running track. People who are hemiplegics, quadriplegics, people who have connective tissue or neurological disorders who simply can't take very much physical exercise. And for people like that, it's amazing to be able to introduce some very interesting Korean science which shows that the benefits of exercise can actually be swallowed in a capsule. This is a herb called Gymnostemna pentaphyllum. The Chinese name is Gyulladás, which means little herb of immortality in Mandarin. And what we have found is that it upregulates the same enzymes that exercise does and has the same effects. I prefer exercise myself, but if I'm flying across the Atlantic and just sitting down for 12 hours, as I will be next week on a flight, or driving a desk, I take some of this herb as well to help me to stay fit. So there's three very simple things, they're very easy changes to make. And I'm not asking people to just try and live on rabbit food or take all the pleasure out of their lives. You don't have to do that. Very simple strategies, and the effects are dramatic.
Does the mainstream medicine accept these ideas? What are the opinion of doctors about these facts?
Well, there's not much point talking to doctors yet. The people who understand this are the clinical scientists, the biochemists, the pharmaconutritionists, the physiologists, the cell biologists. That is where this new consensus is coming from. But it has not yet really percolated through to the doctors, and the reason for that is that the doctors are ring-fenced by the pharmaceutical industry. A lot of the training is subsidized directly or indirectly by drug companies, and they have no interest at all in teaching doctors about these alternatives to pharmaceutical medicine. Why would they? They'd destroy their own business. So it's taking a long time to enlighten the doctors, but it is gradually happening. There are publications in the scientific journals. There are new books coming out, including one of mine. Thank you.
Please introduce your book.
Well, this was only published 6 days ago, so it's brand new. It's a new baby. It's called Out of the Fire, and you can see here a symbol demonstrating that you should put out the fire, and that's a medical approach, because inflammation is exactly like a fire. It actually involves, it's like a slow burning process. And what the evidence tells us, and there's nearly 2,000 references in here from very, very good journals, the science shows us that if you put out those flames, you're going to live longer, you're going to live healthier. And we'll put a lot of doctors out of business. And we'll close down some drug companies too. And I think that's all good stuff.
Is it proven in the practice? I mean, not just case studies, but has there been many people who applied these changes in their lifestyles and they did live a healthier life?
There's plenty of individuals who do this sort of thing, but in case histories and individuals, no matter how enlightened they might be, that's not science. So we have several examples. We know that a moderate improvement in your diet, such as the Mediterranean diet, which has been shown in trial after trial after trial, to reduce the risk of Parkinsonism, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, heart attacks, cancer. We know all this. It's beyond a shadow of a doubt. So we know that some dietary improvement gives you a lot of improved health. We can go further than that because we also know that in the period 1850 to 1890, this is the mid-Victorian era in England, we know that people ate an even healthier diet, and as a result, they had hardly any degenerative disease at all. Very, very little heart disease or cancer. They lived as long as we do today, without modern drugs, without modern surgery, without modern diagnostics, and they tended to die at the same age as we do, but they died healthier.
Not suffering for, let's say, 10 days, not suffering for 10 years before they die, for example.
No, we can expect that because of this terrible way we live, we can expect to spend the last 10% of our lives in a condition of progressive medical dependency. And that's very expensive. We use up a lot of drugs and resources. The Victorians they lived right until the end of their lives, very, very healthily. They were physically well, intellectually and cognitively functioning, they were sexually functional, and then they died very quickly, typically of a fulminant infection. Now, there's two alternatives here. Either you can die slowly and expensively, or you can live healthier for longer and then die suddenly. I mean, there's no third way. I'm sorry, no immortality, not yet. And I think I would prefer the Victorian model, and interestingly, it's much, much cheaper. If you look at the percentage of GDP we spend on healthcare now, in Britain it's about 9 to 10%, in America 18 to 19%. I'm not sure what it is in Hungary, but I think it's probably 7 to 8%, I would guess. The Victorians spent less than 1% of GDP on healthcare. They didn't need any more. They didn't need any more than that. Now just imagine if we could create a healthier population here in Hungary by giving them the basics that they need to basically put their metabolisms, their bodies in order. Well, you would save so much money here in Hungary. Your Hungarian politicians would have access to enormous, millions and millions and millions of it's euros now, isn't it? And they could waste that in all kinds of exciting ways. You could start a war with Bulgaria if you wanted.
You mentioned that only clinical scientists understand these ideas, but I think we have to start a conversation with the doctors, and the best way to start it is to start it with the medical students, and I think something happened in that sense. What is that?
For me, Hungary has always been a country which has shown always great independence of spirit. I see that in your government's attitude to the EU today, which I thoroughly support. I really approve of that. And I see it also in the way in which Hungarian medicine and public health has not allowed itself to be beaten into the ground by the pharmaceutical industry. I'm really delighted to be able to say that at the University of Pécs, with Professor István Kics, we're starting to develop a very interesting dialogue, and I will be teaching medical students there from February of 2014, and I hope to develop a number of collaborative projects with them to show, perhaps initially in the area of Pécs, that by using these techniques we can dramatically improve people's health and reduce healthcare costs. And I hope that in this way we can create a model, an example, that will act as a seed crystal for an idea that we can spread throughout Hungary, and then use Hungary to show the rest of the world what can be done. As I said, one of my very great heroes is Szent György, and I think it would be very appropriate if we could create a kind of a sunrise model, a sunrise approach, and a sunrise industry for healthcare right here in Hungary.
Let it be. Thank you, Paul.
My pleasure.